20146, the SMS line is open. Join in on the conversation. When we sit down, it's time for the conversation. And today I am joined by Mike Oliewo, who is a public policy analyst. Just to bring you up to speed with his portfolio, he is the Director of Public Research and Development Consultant, lecturer on conflict resolution strategies at the Institute for Leadership and Governance. And he is our guest today. Mike, thank you for making time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Census is quite a hot topic right now.
It is.
Actually, from towards the end of last year, and it has spilled over into this year. However, the first question that would come to mind is, what is the essence of a census every 10 years?
Thank you, Ondiro. Census is a very, very deep issue. Mm-hmm. It allows our society to carry out an audit.
Yes.
We get to know the status of service delivery to the people. We get to know the level of services that people get in terms of healthcare, in terms of schools, education, in terms of security, in terms of infrastructure. All these things are captured when census is done, mm-hmm. and the data is inside there, which is very important for purposes of planning. Mm-hmm. Census helps in planning for the future.
Okay.
At least now we know how many people live within our boundaries, mm-hmm. and what services they need, mm-hmm. and when they will need it. Mm-hmm. And we can tell the projections, demographic projections into the future. What will they need 20 years from today, 30 years from today, or even 50 years from today? Mm-hmm. All these, if we utilize the census reports adequately, we will get good results. But unfortunately, in this country, we use census for politics and for political mobilization.
Because ever since the latest results were released and we saw the top 5 tribes in the country, Kikuyus, Luyas, Kalenjins, followed by Luos, it has become quite a rave for politicians, and everybody is running with 2022 tyranny of tribal numbers.
That's the unfortunate part, because census has so much data in there. Mm-hmm. It tells us where we are today,
yes,
and where we are supposed to be heading. Even if there is problems ahead, all that data is in a census report. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say that it is a media construct, because I'm now sitting in a media house.
Yes.
But the construct that has come out is a narrative that this thing is basically a political thing, mm-hmm. that you need it for political mobilization, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. If I were a policy formulator, I would look into this data keenly, mm-hmm. step by step. And you can tell that the guys who are doing the census have several volumes.
Okay.
All those several volumes cannot just be about who is more than the other, whether Kikuyus are more than Kalenjins or the other. Mm-hmm. That's very little part of it. Mm-hmm. We have done a household survey. We want to know how people earn a living in this country, and how many do not have any means of earning a livelihood.
Yes.
Okay. And what do we do about it? Mm-hmm. And what are their needs today? What will be their needs tomorrow?
Okay.
Even the children that are going into class 1 today, we should know where they are heading. Mm-hmm. Because now we have 100% enrollment in primary schools, for instance. We have 100% transition into Form 1. Where are all these guys going?
You ask a very good question in terms of planning.
Yes.
If those who are sitting in the right offices, policy makers, decision makers, they should take this data and use it to examine where they are and where they're going. Yes. Let's take a look at Nairobi, one of the most populated regions in the country, actually the most populated. Yep. If we look at data, it's been constantly showing that our population is growing. Yep. However, there are several areas that are still in limbo, and not just Nairobi, across the country. So for some of these regions, let's say maybe even counties, how can they use this data, let's say in terms of proper planning, not just for the next 10 years, but maybe that 10 years informs the next 50?
Let me put it this way. Kenya, like every other sub-Saharan African country, is characterized by a very high level of rural-urban migration. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to go to the towns.
Yes. Because
there is very little cash economy in the rural areas. Mm-hmm. People think that the cities and the towns at least give them an opportunity to earn some decent living. That simply means that those who are running our towns and cities, even in the counties, mm-hmm. should be thinking with, should be making policies with this in mind. Mm-hmm. Plan, because people are coming. There is no data that suggests that rural urban migration is going to stop soon.
Yes.
It's a reality that is going to be there for a very, very long time.
So in terms of planning, let's maybe look at infrastructure. What do we need to factor in? Healthcare.
It's very easy. Let's take, for instance, healthcare.
Yes.
If we know the number of children who are born in a county, we can start first of all by dealing with prenatal care. How are our pregnant women taken care of before they even deliver?
Yes.
Are they properly taken care of? Do they get all the attention that they need? And when the time to deliver comes, will they get services that is required? Quality services, not just services. Will they deliver at home, or will they deliver in a hospital where the unborn, the newly born can be taken care of, and the mother can also be taken care of? Because that is what will ensure that even maternal health care is taken care of.
Okay.
Because the mothers will not die easily as they do now.
Yes.
The infant will not die easily as they do now. So in terms of health alone, by just looking at this data, we can start planning on how to take care of this situation. Then, when you look at the population overall, like let's say 5 million Nairobians, all these 5 million fellows cannot be healthy all the time. They will need medical attention. So how well spread are these medical facilities around Nairobi? And how well equipped are they? And where are the qualified staff? Are they properly staffed, or are they not properly staffed? Because you see, sometimes a medical facility can exist, but there are no drugs. Sometimes a medical facility can exist, there are drugs, but there are no doctors.
Okay.
All these things need to be addressed, because that only then will it be meaningful that you have proper medical services in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for some of these functions to run, then
Yeah.
revenue has to come in.
Yeah.
And the number of people from the census results might have an effect on revenue allocation. What kind of changes are we likely to see on that front?
In terms of generation of revenue or collection of revenue?
Allocation of revenue.
Allocation of revenue. Now you have brought a new dimension to this. We have the Commission for Revenue Allocation, CRA, which has developed, it is a constitutional commission.
Okay.
It is in the constitution. It has developed a formula for allocating revenue to counties around the country. The index number one that they use is population. So when a county is taken into consideration, they look at the population.
Okay.
Because they're dealing with human beings. If there are 5 million people in Nairobi, for instance, those 5 million people need services. But if there are 20,000 people in Lamu, they need services commensurate with their numbers.
Okay.
So, according to the formula that has been developed by the Commission for Revenue Allocation, population alone, 45% of the total amount of money available for allocation, 45% of it is set aside for population. After that, then you go to equal share. There is 26% that goes to all counties, whether you are heavily populated or sparsely populated or moderately populated. There is 26% that goes to everybody.
Yeah.
After that, then there is poverty gap. There are barometers for measuring the poverty levels in a particular county. Once they do that calculation and they know the difference between county A up to county 47, county 1 to county 47, then they will now allocate funds equitably. So that poverty gap, 18% of the total amount is set aside to address the poverty gap.
Okay.
After that, then land area. You know, some constituencies are very big, and obviously by land area, some counties are bigger than
Others.
That one takes care, 8% takes care of those disparities. Then fiscal effort takes 2%. It became evident that not all counties make any effort to generate their own revenues.
Yes, as I was telling you before we came on air, there's a governor that said people are not paying taxes. I cannot force them to.
Yeah, when you deal with such a governor, now under the current arrangement, he will be punished, or his county will be punished, because there is a certain percentage that his county will not qualify for if the county does not make any meaningful effort to raise its own revenue. But the counties that have made efforts and raised their own revenues, which is substantial and can be registered, they will benefit from 2% of the total amount of the revenue to be allocated. And then there is the development index, which takes 1%, meaning that you should not just take all the money from the national government and pay salaries. You should use that money for recurrent expenditure and development expenditure.
Okay.
When development expenditure, it means for things that are not salaries or remunerations,
Yeah.
for things that can be seen, things that have been built, you know. Now, if you have such projects which are evidently visible, then you now benefit from the 1% remaining out of the total.
So from the census numbers, we are moving away from land and how big the area is in terms of allocation and poverty, to how densely populated are you, then that is what we will use to allocate resources to you.
Yeah, the argument is that services are needed by human beings, not by space.
Okay.
So the space may be so big, but there are only 3 fellows living there. And yet, another space may be so small, but there are 1 million people living there.
Okay.
So who do you give the money? Who needs the money more? The 1 million fellows.
Okay.
The 3 guys, you can deal with them. You can give them money commensurate with their numbers.
Fair enough. Now, also, another area that we might see may be affected is boundaries.
Yes.
Because we know some areas have been split before when the populations were found to be very high, and some were merged when the populations were little. Are we likely to see this kind of change?
Yes. The law says that our electoral boundaries should be reviewed between 8 and 12 years.
Yes.
And we last had it in 2012. I saw recently Mr. Wafula Chebukati, the chair of the IBC, announced that he's commencing the review process in March. Now, there is a formula that was developed to determine the population quota. The population quota is the total number of citizens in Kenya divided equally among the 290 constituencies. So with that means if you divide the current figure that we have of around 47 million by 290, that means the population quota for this year will be around 164,000. But that figure is not fixed.
Yes.
Because there are cities. The demographics in cities is definitely different from the demographics in the rural areas. So there are variations. Like the calculation used for Nairobi is not the same as the calculation used in Marsabit. Marsabit benefits because there is no way you can allocate a constituency or a ward in Marsabit with the same numbers here. Then probably a ward in Nairobi will be equivalent to the entire Marsabit district, and yet those are human beings.
So what changes are we likely to see?
They will review the boundaries. They can redraw the boundaries, but Parliament must first say if they want to increase the number of constituencies. Parliament must first approve that. That is the work of Parliament. The
option of reduction?
That still goes back to Parliament. Yes.
Okay.
Parliament determines the number. Then the IBC redraws or draws the maps.
And speaking of those who were not many as per the census numbers, there are communities that their numbers were dismal. As they did the top 5, they also did the bottom 5. And there have been conversations about fair representation. Because sometimes, as you said, unfortunately, tyranny of numbers is not the essence of the census, but most of the time it's turned into a political tool. Let's listen into what Governor Anne Waiguru had to say, and then we'll get your 2 cents.
Okay.
Give me volume, Tabiko.
Bila yale wengine kutoka maeneo yale wengine pia wapate fursa ya kuongoza wa Kenya. Kenya sio ya kabila mbili. Kenya ni yetu sisi wote. Tuongeze hiyo kiti ya Prime Minister, tuongeze deputies, tuweke ya president na deputy. Lakini sisi kama kina mama, kama vile dada zangu wamesema, tunataka hizo viti za kule juu zikiongezwa, pia nafasi 2 zipewe kina mama.
Fair representation, irrespective of who you are or how small your tribe is. Kenya does not belong to the big 2, big 4, big 3. What kind of effect are these numbers likely to cause in terms of representation?
I want to comment on what Governor Anne Kamodo or Anne Waiganjo has said. And I want to take a different opinion from hers. Creation of posts up there to take care of tribal leaders may not be the solution that we are seeking. First of all, let us entrench constitutionalism in this country, because our constitution is very rich and it is very progressive. It takes care of our interests. It has a robust Bill of Rights. It addresses all our basic needs. It even identifies what are basic needs for everybody: housing, health, education, water, all these things. You don't need your tribesman to be president or to be prime minister for you to benefit from what the constitution already provides you with. It is a matter of implementation. We need to implement. Secondly, let us strengthen devolution. As matters stand now, devolved units, even though they have a lot of corruption in there, but as we are speaking, there is always delayed disbursement of funds from Treasury to the counties. The net effect is development is stagnated at the counties.
Yes.
Nothing moves because of delays in disbursements of funds. Now that undermines devolution.
Yes.
So let us as a country agree that we need to strengthen devolution, make devolution work.
And go ahead.
Let me just go to the third one. The third one, let us strengthen the institutions of governance. Once we strengthen the institutions of governance, we know all the institutions that are supposed to help us realize our dreams, our development dreams in this country. Once they are tight and in place, we will not have the problems. We will not even need your tribesman to be at the top. Finally, let us stamp out corruption. Because corruption is a scourge here, and corruption will finish this country. And I don't think that even if your tribesman is at the top and corruption continues the way it does, that you will benefit, unless he's your personal friend or your personal relative. So we should deal with corruption as a country. Then we will not care who becomes president, who becomes prime minister, in my opinion.
I just want you to take you back to that devolution point that you mentioned. And maybe we must look at census from a sustainable point of view, because when they were asking questions, it's one cut for everyone. However, Kenyans were making jokes of, they asked me if I had a boat. With devolution now here, and it looks like it's here to stay, how do we tailor our census towards differential diagnosis so that these counties can get data that they can use?
Actually, we discussed this with you before we came on set. It's high time that census exercise is fully devolved, so that even those who are designing the questionnaires, those who are designing the samples, those who are auditing those reports, have a county in mind, a specific county in mind. Because once they have a specific county in mind, then they can frame the questions appropriately. There is no point asking somebody in Nyeri if he or she owns a boat. That should be asked in Homa Bay or in Lamu.
Yes.
That is where owning boat makes sense. And probably the fellow in Nyeri who owns a boat probably is for holidaying. When time for holidays come,
it's a yacht.
It's a yacht, and then they take it to the ocean and they frolic with it. So I agree with you. Census should now go to the counties and be county specific and ask specific questions. Because again, like poverty, how do you measure poverty in Mandera, and how do you measure poverty in Kakamega?
Yes.
You know, in Mandera, a guy who owns 1,000 camels is a very rich guy.
Yes.
In Kakamega, a guy who owns 1,000, there's nobody who owns 1,000 camels. So how do you use that yardstick to judge who is poor and who is? Does it mean that the people of Kakamega are very extremely poor because they don't own camels?
And even when it comes to how many meals somebody has a day, there are some who live below $1 but afford a meal, and there are some who live below $1 and can only afford a meal a day.
Yes. So the yardsticks cannot be the same. We need to be very specific about how we deal with these issues. And that is why I would really urge for devolution of census taking, so that even the framing of questions is county specific. Because in a county you will know, if you deal with a specific county, you will know what actually, how to measure poverty or how to measure wealth.
Great. Now I want to bring in CS National Treasury Ukuri Atani on what he said the national government and maybe the county government should do with this data. Listen.
All government ministries, counties, development and agencies to make use of the huge data that has been provided as a result of the census. which is set in a vital source of which will be a vital source of information for planning, monitoring, evaluation of various policies, strategies, and development plans at the national, subnational, and sectoral level.
We've tackled national and sub-county and county level. Let's take a look at national. You 2 cents on his remarks.
Honorable Ukuru Yatani is very right. When we have data, data is supposed to help us in planning, first and foremost, so that we can be able to plan accurately. Because even if you have a shop that sells bread only, you need to have a rough idea who your consumers will be. Because otherwise, if you have no idea, you will bake 1,000 loaves and you only sell 1 or 2 in a day, then your breads will go to waste. So data is usually important even in business. Even for private businessmen, they need to know who the consumers are and where they are located and what are their consumption tastes. Do they prefer what you want to sell to them? Or you just want to sell because you've seen human beings? Not everybody buys things because you like those things. People have their own preferences. So Yatani is very right. In terms of project management or project implementation, data is always important because it helps you in knowing. For instance, like people complain in Nairobi about traffic jams. Data helps you to understand how many vehicles are coming into Nairobi. How many are there currently? How do you plan for that? Do you expand roads? Or do you increase parking levy? Because Nairobi has this unorthodox means that if you want to reduce vehicles in the city center, you
hike parking
prices so that very few people can afford to come in. I wonder if that is the solution. Probably a more innovative solution would be there so that people can enjoy driving their cars. But that needs planning, whether we need to expand our roads or we need to create other parking lots, or development planning is very important, but based on data.
Very briefly, how will this data inform the president's Big Four agenda over the next 3 years?
The president's Big Four agenda, this data is very, very useful for him. Let's begin with manufacturing. I think the president needs to concentrate a lot on manufacturing. You know why? Because we have to deal with the runaway unemployment in this country. We have youth who are dropping out of school every year. Some are dropping out in primary school or after primary school. Some are dropping out after Form 4. Some are dropping out or graduating from TVETs. Some are graduating from universities. And where are they going? I am very, very much persuaded that we need to do something about manufacturing in this country, or value addition to whatever we produce, because that is the fastest way of creating jobs for our youth. You know, it is fanciful to say that the youth can come together and do business because they have been trained to take care of themselves. But that is on paper.
Economics training.
That is basically on paper. The reality is usually different. Look at it this way. If a child goes to school today in a public school, let's say Mwangaza Primary School, because of the free primary education, you'll find that in a classroom, there are over 100 pupils. A classroom that was designed to hold 25. Now, because of FPE, there are 100 pupils. There is one teacher who wants to teach them, give them exercises, mark, control the noisemakers, discipline them, all that. In essence, the children are getting a raw deal. The schools themselves are dilapidated. Some schools, you saw the other one when they were, the one in Kandara, when they were fighting Alice Wahome that she was not doing anything in a constituency. But that is symptomatic of what's going on across the country. The schools are dilapidated. The teachers are inadequate. The facilities are non-existent. And the children are in a conveyor belt. When they reach class 8, then we now start saying that we have 100% transition. So again, we push them to Form 1. When they go to Form 1, again, it's a bulging population. The classrooms are inadequate, the facilities are not there, the laboratories are not there, the libraries are not there, the teachers, we have refused to employ them. Teachers who graduated in 2010 are still out here. They reach Form 4. They come to the job market. Now you want to start blaming them, telling them, oh, you know, I spent, you know, the state
The
gave you
government
free
has spent a
education.
lot of money in your education.
And now you should come and get yourself a job. The guy is half-baked because we did not give him quality education. Secondly, this guy, if he needs to start a business, he doesn't have a penny.
Yes.
So he needs a loan. If he goes to ask for a loan, they'll ask him for collateral.
Yes.
Doesn't have any. So where does he go?
Good question. Where does he go? I want us to hold that thought because I want to take a short breather.
Okay.
When we come back, we shall be sampling some of the views that Kenyans have shared on social media, what they think about this topic, what they think the interpretation of the census number has been. Are they impressed? And then we'll give you time to do your parting shot. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Okay, we take a short breather, but when we come back, Social Watch, where my mic goes off and your voice comes on. See you shortly.